Soccer for Us, and on this episode, we're talking about, quite honestly, a disappointing result for the U.S. men's national team in the 2023 Gold Cup. And to talk about this unfortunate end, or just quite honestly, a not satisfying end to the tournament, especially after all the success we've had, it's my friend U.S. Keeper, aka Thomas. Thomas, luckily, we can put this behind us and focus on the Women's World Cup, right? This didn't matter at all.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely can look forward to the Women's World Cup for sure. But yeah, to me, anytime you have a tournament, it matters. I mean, that's you're not going to just go out there and half-ass the situation. I mean, that's that's where I struggle with maybe how some of the approach was with the U.S. At times in this tournament.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best kind of way that I would look at it. Is this wasn't a full committal to any particular strategy or direction. Obviously, could kind of set the stage. The U.S. crashed out of the 2023 Gold Cup in the semifinal, which is not altogether the most disappointing thing ever. Lost in penalty kicks to Panama, tied 1-1 at the end of regulation, and ended up losing in penalties in the sixth round of penalty kicks at that. That came on the heels of a thrilling 2-2 win over Canada in the quarterfinals, where we again had to go to penalty kicks. But overall, this was a Gold Cup featuring players who were, at best, in consideration for the top squad the U.S. men's national team has to offer. There were maybe two players on this roster as a whole who are part of who are in consideration to start, if not starters, for the full national team. If we had everyone available, but there are way too many guys who, in my opinion, were third, fourth on the depth chart, maybe fifth. Thomas, you went through and listed out your first five, I guess, the five starting 11s, if you will. So 5 deep, basically, at just about every position. Was that your disappointment with this roster as a whole? Is that it's not even that they were not close to the A squad. It's that some of these guys were not working toward being part of that top group.
Yeah, so so that's an interesting exercise, and just quickly, just talking to that, it really didn't include a lot of any U20 players. So
Yeah.
Right, and almost by design a little bit, because I was basing it based on the provisional rosters, which I think kind of are 69 different players, right? And that's kind of the reason I built it. And so again, some of those players were on there. There were a few players in the rosters were that, but I think when you look at that, you have to try to find a balance between the youth and between the veteran players and then also the fringe guys. I mean, there's a lot of fringe guys that did fine, look at Busio and that sort of thing. And so you have to look at that and he's a one that's worth evaluating, right? That's a valuable part for him. But when you look at other players, again, Aaron Long and we can go on, and you bring in Jackson Ewell, a player that hasn't been part of the national team in a very long time. To me, that's a fail because you lost. Okay, you didn't make it to the final, so your plan didn't work, right? So, but if it doesn't work and you bring in these younger guys, then I'm a little more okay with it because what's your objective to the tournament? I think you want to win it, but you can also experiment full roster with some of these other positions where, again, depth was a problem. We saw that. They finally figured out a lineup that worked, but then when you play an overtime game, they get exhausted and you have 3-day rest. You can't turn that over. And so that's where I think we've missed it in general. You can't roll the same starting 11 out there for as much as you want to, match after match. You have to have better options and to be able to provide that in there. And they did fine, but if they had some fresh legs, I think they actually win that game, right?
Well, I think, for example, the midfield trio of Busio, Mihailovic, and Sands, which started every match after the opener together, you could tell, especially James Sands, that they were tired by the end of regulation. And I get that. A guy like Jesus Ferreira, who played a lot during this tournament, and even when he wasn't playing a full striker position, was still on the field in some sort of role. I will talk about it when we get to this game, but his missed penalty kick, it looked like it was because he was tired, like, to be 100%. He didn't get the power on it he needed. So I'm with you in that this roster wasn't well built, period, but it also wasn't well utilized. And for me, that's where this disappointment comes. So the big question is, was this a failure for the U.S. men's national team in the 2023 Gold Cup? Was it a failure?
I think it's a failure. I mean, because you have to make it to the final. There's unless you're doing something that's completely outside of the scope of of anything, you have the talent at multiple levels to put in a squad that can get to the final, unless some crazy stuff happens, right? There are a few lucky moments away from the final, right? But there are also a few unlucky moments away from losing to Canada, right? So,
Sure,
so
yeah.
you can look at it both ways, but you have to do that. You have you have to manage it better overall, right? You just can't think, well, we're just gonna throw these veteran guys out there that have experience and caps with the team, and they're gonna figure it out, and that's fine. Like, they want to figure it out in the group stage, and they've said it the last two Gold Cups, that sort of statement. Well, we have to figure it out through the group stage, and then we'll kind of put together. And you've seen it with the lineup changes, right? And so, but it's a failure because they didn't make it to the final. It's a failure because we already know what a lot of these players can and can't do, right? And so, and that's the thing. That's the takeaway. You have to elevate these players, and this is the opportunity to do that, to see different players. I don't care who's the manager.
And that's also where I'm at, is this was a failure because, not because we didn't make the final, which I think is a failure if you're the U.S., but like, you can reason away. It's a failure because you didn't really discover anyone or anything that can help you in the future. So I look back to that 2021 Gold Cup, where we had obviously had another summer where we had Nations League final and a Gold Cup tournament in the same summer. That 2021 Gold Cup featured a lot of guys who were fighting to be a part of the World Cup roster. Obviously, that was going to be, at that point, 18 months from then. So the roster as a whole felt stronger, but it also felt more promising because you were actually trying to find people who could help you in that World Cup the next winter. This roster felt like it wasn't even geared toward, outside of maybe a few players, a handful maybe, there weren't a lot of like exploratory missions going on, right? It wasn't like, well, we're trying to figure out if this guy can do it, or if he can really help us, or can he play a role. It was a lot of guys who, quite honestly, are not going to help us in 2026, or are just so far down the depth chart that it doesn't really matter. The real failure for me, though, was not bringing in young talents to kind of blood them in a tournament that really matters. And again, trying to elevate that A squad. And the biggest one I look at is Paxton Harrison was not part of any of the three tournaments this summer that the U.S. participated in: U20 World Cup, Nations League, or Gold Cup. And that, to me, is a big swing and a miss. And there are others like him. Paredes got 2 games at the World Cup, the U20 World Cup. That, to me, is where we're looking at failures, because I understand you can tell me, oh, well, they need to be at their club, and I don't disagree. But you're also the U.S. men's national team, and you have to look out for yourself first. Obviously, you have to manage these relationships, but that, to me, feels like where we failed the most. It's not necessarily performance or the end product. Oh, we didn't make the final. We didn't find out anything new. We didn't get to introduce any youngsters into the actual program.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of the protecting your relationships with the club. Like, it's a FIFA win. It's a FIFA tournament. They're required to release them. I understand, and the thing is, this is an early tournament. Club preseason is just now starting.
Yeah.
So it's over. Like, okay, they come in, they get maybe a week rest, and they're back into training. Like, they're already probably informed there. So that, I'm getting tired of that narrative, because really, we do have to think about ourselves as a national team, right? We have to think about those things, because if we don't, then we're never going to get the opportunities to do that, because it's always the excuse, well, we can't play him because he hasn't had the experience. Like, and that's a typical response I get from U.S. Soccer all the time. Well, okay, but then how, if you can't get the experience and you are playing this game where you're not taking players that you could, like what are we doing here? Because you have to be selfish a little bit. Like, I get if a guy is, like, again, the Miles Robinson thing blows my mind. Like, I don't think he should have been playing. I love Miles. I think he's good. But
as an Atlanta United fan, I also don't think he should have been playing. It was very clear that he was good at Nations League for the game that he played, but I didn't want him there because it's like he's coming off an injury, and also we know what Miles is going to do.
Right, and you limit it to his opportunities with the team. He's like, okay,
Right.
he's not going to play to the third game, but he's only play 45 minutes, and then he's limited to 90 minutes, right?
Right.
Like you don't want to hurt the player to do that. There's other players who could have definitely gone in and taken a spot.
Yeah.
In general,
you could have. I mean, I'm with you. But there were just other players we could have called in. Obviously, I think as we get into more discussing this tournament as a whole, but it was again just disappointing for me. The failure being not building out the player pool, and I don't think we increased the player pool. And by that I mean, like, as you noted, the guys that are going to be in that preliminary roster. I think it was 40 for the World Cup. It was a 40-man preliminary roster. So to me, that's what I'm looking at is if you're in that list of top 40 players, or whatever it actually is, that to me is you're in consideration for the A squad. I don't know if we added many people to that. And to me, again, that's the failure. But the next question is, was this an embarrassment? Because I don't know if this was necessarily embarrassing, but I'm curious what you had to feel about that, because it is not great.
yeah. I mean, embarrassing's tough. I mean, I mean, if I'd say yes or no, it's a yes, it's embarrassment. But here's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of eyes on soccer right now in America. Okay, so you need to take every single opportunity you have to be able to pull in those fans, right? And so again, it doesn't have to be the A squads, but that's the point of this whole thing. Like, it seemed like they're missing the mark on that a little bit for some reason. Like, I guess it's no different. We have not seen anything different in terms of this approach, since Crocker, was, it's the same as the last Gold Cup, and it's the same from, there's no different, right? And so that's where I'm getting frustrated, because it's the same insanity over and over again, expecting different results, right? I mean, yeah, that's the definition of insanity. And so I think the Federation has been doing that for 60 years and thinking, they're going to do that. So they missed somewhat of an opportunity, because Sunday night's game, it's 8:00 on a Sunday. There's nothing else on. You know what I mean? You're flipping around
now in the summer,
right? Exactly. You're flipping around. I mean, I watched a little of the second half, but like, if I'm a casual soccer fan and I'm flipping around, I see the game on. It's U.S. versus Mexico. Hell yeah, I'm turning it on. You know what I mean? Like,
or if the U.S. is playing in general, even if it's not.
Oh, right, exactly. It doesn't have to be Mexico, but
if they're in the final, you're watching. I agree, and that to me is, I don't know if it's an embarrassment, but along those lines. So my dad watched this because my little brothers were watching, and so my dad's watching it, and he and I were chatting yesterday about it, and he said, I don't think the team looked very good. And I was like, well, no, it wasn't. And I had to explain to him, and like, he's a sports guy, he understands like the concept of first choice, second choice, he understands the depth chart. But then he's like, well, why do we play him in this tournament? And it's like, well, that's a great question. It's much easier if you say, well, we wanted to try out the U23 team because we have Olympics next summer, something like that, right? Or, oh, well, we gave everyone who's kind of like a second choice player a shot because, we just had the World Cup. We know who our best 23 maybe is, so we wanted to try. But that wasn't what we just saw. I don't think that any of these guys truly made a case for them to be a part of that 40-man, if you will, prelim roster, 40-man group that kind of gets selected for these tournaments. And I don't know if it's embarrassing, but I'm with you. It's a missed opportunity, and it's something that they need to think about. Now, I do think that we're not going to have this issue really, hopefully, with two CONCACAF tournaments in the same summer for a long time. But it's a missed opportunity to at least do something exciting.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, I think going forward, you're not going to see the CONCACAF Nations League and Gold Cup follow like that. I think the final is scheduled for March of next year. So you shouldn't see that conflict any longer. But yeah, you have to, you have to be able to really look at your opportunities, right, in terms of how best to use this roster. And that's the thing. Like, I think when you talk about the Olympics and you talk about the U23s, I don't think they manage that very well. And I don't know the best way to do it, honestly, but I think you have to take a different approach with that. I had suggested several times recently that maybe, and it somewhat lines up, maybe Greg Berhalter takes on the goal, on the Olympic side. I mean, because
I don't
that's the
think
way
that's
it
a bad
used to be.
idea. Yeah.
That's the way it used to be. You know what I mean? And so, and by doing that, you can, create camps that are designed to, bring in that player. You could have done it with this Gold Cup. You could have said, "Hey, look, these are just prospective players that we could possibly have on the Olympics that are eligible next year. Let's see how it's going to work." You know what I mean? Again, you might have a couple other players there. Matt Turner playing, who cares? Like that, but you can still,
Yeah, you're not going to have a fully U23 roster. Like, obviously, Matt Turner, because I think Matt Turner maybe is good to have with a group of defenders in front of him are relatively young, so he can help them understand the urgency of the international, level. But I think there are a lot of ways you could have built this roster, and again, they weren't committed to any single one because we had some young talents that we were trying to look at. We had some of those guys like, well, can he maybe take a backup spot at this position? But overall, we weren't really committed to any one single direction. But yeah, I mean, to again reiterate, this is very unlikely to happen in the future. We have 2 CONCACAF tournaments in the same summer. Nations League is hopefully going back to its original plan of March for the finals. I still think we're playing that too frequently. We know that we're playing Gold Cup too frequently. But we will have 2 tournaments next summer, hopefully, with Copa America and the U23. So we're going to at least see 2 different squads for obvious reasons. But again, there's a strict dichotomy about that, right? You have a U23 squad because of the Olympics versus a full senior national team squad for Copa America. This was not this was not the direction they should have gone. This was not the strategy they should have deployed. And also, we have to understand too that you have an interim head coach, which does, throw a lot of things into flux. But I'm with you, like Matt Crocker. Why couldn't you have had the foresight to say, "Hey, we're actually just going to, who do you think are the numbers 3 and 4 at each position on our depth chart? Bring them in." Or, "Hey, give us the best under 25 players that you can find, bring them in," type of stuff. Again, to build toward 2026. We didn't do that. Instead, we lost in the semifinals. So let's get into talking a little bit about these knockout round games. First, in the quarterfinals, we played Canada. We tied 2-2, but won 3-2 out of penalty kicks. I felt like this was a very tough watch. Neither team was particularly good. I thought the U.S. still looked like the better team, but it wasn't fantastic.
Yeah, it wasn't a sharp game at all. I mean, there was moments for sure. The both things I take away from both of these is the fact that they got down in extra time and ended up fighting their way back. Like to me that's a positive takeaway. Obviously, for some of those, some of the players on those teams, obviously, to see that. But yeah, I just, again, I think we got a little false sense of comfort because I saw a lot of U.S. is going to win 2-0, 3-0 against Canada, and I'm like, okay, but based on what? Based on playing 2 terrible teams in CONCACAF and like, and again, it's a false sense of confidence when you do that, right? And so Canada's a good team, in general. Like they're gonna give you a fight, and I don't think the players took it that way, but I think that's where CONCACAF is weird, right? Because there's a huge gap between the top 8 teams, maybe 10 teams, in the Confederation, and everyone else pretty much sucks. But they really do. Like, I mean, there's a few teams that go up and down, and come maybe in and out of that 10, but they're just not good. Like you should be winning 3, 4, 5, 6-0 like that. Those are the results you should be having against those teams. It's when you start playing the tougher competition where the rubber meets the road, right? Where the tactics and whether the skill and preparation is there, because you don't really learn a lot from those 6-0 wins, right? You just
Right.
don't. It's just hard to evaluate.
Yeah. I mean, and that's luckily we got a couple of good opponents this tournament, and we got tested. I don't think we necessarily passed any of the 3 tests against decently good competition, but
Yeah.
they were at least tested. Vasquez gets his goal in the 88th minute. DeJuan Jones with a fantastic cross and really just a thunderous finish from Vasquez. It felt to me like that goal was the U.S. deserved, in my opinion, to win this game in the 90 minutes. I thought that we dictated most of the play, and I know Canada does like to sit back, but they weren't doing the same Canada like, oh, we're going to lure you into a trap and then break out. They weren't really threatening going forward. The U.S. looked in control of the match. They just were unable to do the whole scoring bit until that cross to Vasquez. But then, unfortunately, Miles Robinson gets a penalty call for a handball. Greg Velasquez from the Scub podcast, I think, summarized it best. Miles got surprised by the Canadian attacker not knowing how to control the ball, because it was very much like a better attacker takes the first touch that's okay, instead of it just bouncing off of everything. And so we go to extra time 1-1, and then Schaffelberg early in the second period of extra time gets a goal. And I do want to talk a little bit about this goal, because I think a lot's going to be made of Jesus Ferreira not first winning a tackle and then fouling Schaffelberg. I think this is, again, one of those things where Jesus, unfortunately, is on the wrong end of a bad play that necessarily isn't like terrible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, look, yeah, I mean, it's easy to be critical in that moment, and I was in that moment.
Absolutely, you should be critical. It's just
right, yeah, and it's a yeah. I mean, it's a tough. It was a quick counter, and he just happened to be in the kind of a wrong spot for him, and he didn't react properly on both sides, winning the tackle, and then he could have fouled, in that moment and prevented it. But it's that's part of the game too. Like, I mean, he's usually up top, right? And so I do want to give him kudos. I actually thought he played very well in the midfield, when he was playing, and I actually would like to see a little bit more. I actually want to see a little bit more of it.
I think especially if we're playing like we saw a little bit more in the Nations League, not a true double pivot, but like definitely a 2 guys kind of a little behind the play and 1 guy ahead of the play. I think Jesus could fill that very well. We'll talk about him at the end, because I have a lot of thoughts about Jesus. Actually, I have a very succinct thought about Jesus, but I also just want to point out, like, Matt Miazga did not defend well in this at all. He allowed Schaffelberg way too much time and space to get into the box. I don't even think the deflected shot is really the problem, but the fact that he gave him so much room to dribble so far and then get a shot off, that to me was not good defending by Matt Miazga, a guy who, I don't want to say talked a lot of smack, but seemed to just think that he had some sort of beef with Greg Berhalter for not really including him in either the World Cup squad or, teams leading up to the World Cup. And I don't think he did himself too many favors in this tournament, certainly not in that particular instance.
No, Greg got the win on that one. Miazga was not impressive at all, which is disappointing, because I was optimistic we would see something a little bit better from him.
Same.
He had opportunity, and he didn't really make the best of it, unfortunately.
Well, we can say that for a lot of guys on this team. And then, luckily we get a tying goal. It technically is an own goal, but at the end of the day, we created that goal. We created the havoc. It just happened to go off a Canadian player last. And so we get a goal to tie it, and we go to penalty kicks. I do want to point out that it was 3-2 on penalty kicks, so don't act like the U.S. was somehow great at penalties here. But who was great was Matt Turner. Let's just appreciate Matt Turner being a very good goalkeeper for a second, because saving a penalty kick is a lot of luck. I'll be the first to say that, obviously, as a goalkeeper, but it also is a lot of skill, because you have to put yourself in the position to save it. And specifically the first penalty kick save against Vitoria, where he dared him to go down the middle. Vitoria did go down the middle again, as he did in regulation, and Turner saves it. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, Turner. I mean, he blew me away. Like, I mean, to he's ice in his veins on that. I mean, he was. I mean, that's it's a redemption opportunity, right? Early in the game, he scores a penalty, right, to send it to extra time, and so that short memory. The keepers have short memories. Good ones do, right? And he remembered what he needed to remember, but he certainly didn't dwell on it, and that's where I don't know. He's so impressive to me. There's a long, he's got a long career, hopefully with the U.S. men's national team.
Yeah.
So this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think what we're going to see from him. He's, you wouldn't have thought he hadn't played much during the season, right? He was, he was tuned in. He's doing his work. He's number one right now, and so I think it's going to take a lot to knock him off that. So
he's the only player who truly, for me, in this tournament, like, did himself favors, cemented that number one spot. Not that I don't think there was any. For some reason, there's like lingering questions. Matt Turner is the number one. Like, that's just what it is. He played like the number one this tournament, though.
And he was a great lead. I think he's got a great leader. He's a great attitude. Like, that's the thing. Like, keepers are kind of an interesting breed. But his approach is just is right on in all the areas. And so that's not, and you could be a great keeper and not be some of those things either, but he kind of does it all. And so, and he's still growing his game, and he's still, he wants to grow his game. He wants to be better. And so, and just to see and hear that is great, because, we want to see our best players, playing, and we want to see them continue to grow.
Well, it was a good performance by him. He obviously saved another penalty kick, and then one at the end was missed off the crossbar. In my opinion, anytime that a player does not make a penalty, is a save by the goalkeeper, but I don't think they quite credit it that
way. I would agree with that. I've had, call it luck, call whatever, but it's
hey, the ball didn't go in the back of the net, so I did my job. That's why
exactly. Yep, I'll second that, absolutely.
And I do think at that point, like, there is extra pressure, and I think you saw it in the Panama players' approach to penalty kicks, but you could see there was extra pressure on the Canadians to make a very good penalty kick, and they weren't able to do so in the final kick. So we win. We beat Canada again. That felt good.
Yes,
that felt good. For a country, a bunch of people who have been yapping a whole lot about how they're somehow good and on the soccer scene, it felt good to dismiss them in the quarters of the Confederational Tournament, and then have also beaten them in the final of the Nations League.
It's ramping. The rivalry is ramping up a little bit. Obviously the video was released and at the halftime. I mean, it's ramping up, and that's a good thing for.
Well, let's also just call it what it is. Rich Laraya's a POS.
Yeah,
he's the one who kind of ramps all this up. That's for sure.
That sort of thing. I could eliminate from it, but it's you want to have fire. You want to have you want to be able to do those sorts of things, because it makes fans get more interested in the rivalry, in the soccer in general. So it's it'll be interesting to see how it progresses. I know Canada's having a tough time with their federation. Hopefully they can figure out on their end, but they're going to be around, so we can't take them for granted.
I'd rather have another true rival, because I feel like Mexico has been our rival, obviously, but a lot of the other rivalries, like obviously there's been one with Costa Rica, they kind of go up and down depending on how good the other team is. Canada, obviously, on the upswing. Maybe that's the rival for the next decade or so. But it's good to have another team that is competent and capable of putting in good performances and create an intimidating and fiery atmosphere when you play, because there's too many. I mean, we can talk El Salvador all we want, but they haven't beaten us. Sure, they've gotten a draw or two, but like, it's hard to really call that a rivalry when the results are so one-sided. Canada at least has put together some good results against us and some good performances. But we beat them. They sent them home. That felt good. Then we go on to lose to Panama on penalty kicks. 1-1 was the final score. It was 0-0 at the end of regulation, 1-1 at the end of extra time, and we lose on penalty kicks 4-5. BJ Callahan said that he got the tactics wrong at the beginning of the match. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that the first 7 minutes maybe they had a lot of energy in there, but what little they had, then they were just on their back heels on that. I mean, the adjustment at halftime definitely increased the attack considerably, and the attack, the possession. I mean, they played a different approach that was more entertaining. That second half was more entertaining, I thought, for sure. And they had more
we looked
opportunities.
more confident for sure, because Panama, after, like you said, after that first 7-10 minutes, Panama bossed the first half, and I felt like we were more in control of ourselves the second half for sure. I don't know, but to your point earlier, like we could have scored within the first 2 minutes. I mean, was it Cowell who just hit? Yeah, if that goes on the right side of the post, we're up 1-0 with 2 minutes, first 2 minutes in. Like that changes everything.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the difference. Again, that's that luck factor the U.S. needs when they're playing any tournament, right? They need to have it on their side. Get that in, changes the game, right? You know what I mean? You're in a different position, but yeah, I think the tactic. As critical as I am, the tactics, put them in a position where they could have actually won it in regulation.
Well, and also, there's only so many tactical things that a coach does that really put, like, maybe he got it wrong, but the squad that he put out there was good enough to hopefully beat this Panama team, And if I were to really criticize him, the only critical thing that I have truly is taking out Cowell so early. That's my only critique, was that he took him out. I think he was one of the first subs off. Which one he put on Christian Roldan. So I'm never a fan of any coach who puts Christian Roldan on a soccer field. But I felt like Cowell, to me, was one of the few guys actually making things happen. But I don't. Also, he hasn't played a whole lot at the tournament, so it's like he's got fresh legs. I don't know. I think that was another, to me, a bigger mistake than just the overall tactical setup we had at the beginning. But that's just me.
Yeah, I don't get the whole Roldan, winger thing. I mean, the guy doesn't score goals. He's not a goal scorer or anything.
Well, and of course,
he brings energy.
Yeah, he does. I mean, and clearly he, if we want to throw out a buzz term, he knows the system, which apparently means more than actually being able to play soccer well. Ask Jackson Ewell. But it's like he did one good thing with Yedlin when he first came on that, again, led to nothing because it's Christian Roldan and he doesn't actually produce anything. And then after that, he was not very good. Also, Yedlin, it's very clear that Brian Reynolds was bad at this game, but DeAndre Yedlin is not the answer in my opinion. But yeah, I don't think that the tactics were terrible by BJ, because it's not like they were drastically different than anything else we've done. It was, I think maybe he just didn't get the right players on the field this match.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have the right ones available, I would say too, though. He didn't have a lot of options, right? Because you had a player in Adrian Morris who was even on the squad. I mean, he left, and so we can't replace that player apparently. So that leaves you playing
injury, right?
Right. It wasn't
injury. It's personal.
Yeah, and according to the rules, it's quite strict in terms of that. And so, and then you essentially bring in Jackson Ewell, who knew the system, but he wasn't going to play. So I don't know why bring him in, and so that leaves you two midfielders, as for subs, and so they
one
just
of
didn't
them
have
you used on the wing, by the way.
Well, exactly, and so, and then Zendejas wasn't available in that game either. Yeah,
got a knock in training, but we also didn't bring a lot of good wingers to this as well. So yeah, I'm with it. Just again, the poor roster construction kind of bit us here, where we actually needed some depth and attacking and game changers off the bench. And to be fair, I don't think that Cowell was great this game. I just think that I watched Cade Cowell play soccer, and I'm more inclined to think something productive is going to come out of that than when I watch Christian Roldan play for the U.S. Men's National Team.
Yeah, 10 more minutes is not going to kill. You know what I mean? It's not going to make it's not going to break them. Let's just put it that way. To give him 10 more, because I think he was out in the 63rd minute.
I also just want to take a moment to maybe consider that we're not a great penalty kick taking team. We missed 2 again in this match, the semifinal against Panama. The first one was Ferreira. I have been publicly stated that I don't think Ferreira's too, like, he missed the penalty. It was not a good penalty kick. I don't think he should have been taking a penalty kick in the first spot. I think he should have been later on. The dude just got done cramping on the field. He's played 240 minutes over the past 4 days. Like, it was very clear he was tired. His legs were tired. That was a bad miss, though.
Yeah, I mean, he had made a penalty earlier in the tournament on one of his hat tricks, and I didn't even think that shot was very. I mean, honestly, that's a very savable penalty that he scored.
Well, and if you remember, Dane St. Clair got a finger to his penalty kick against Canada.
That's true. It's correct. Yeah. I mean, I thought it was well placed. It just didn't have the pace on it, right? And so, because it's in the lower corner, and again, it just didn't have the pace on it, and so that that's where the keeper's going. The keeper's not going to save up high. They can't get there, right? So they're going to go low to middle, and they're gonna guess, and they're going to give it all they can. And so, and you don't have pace on it, and based on the legs, it's not surprising. So, but yeah, I think it the penalty. I mean, I don't know how you get better at penalties. I don't know how you get better at set pieces in general. But like is it practice? Because practice only gets you so far, right? It's within the games, and I always wonder like who has the chance? It's just the person that grabs the ball and say, "Yep, you're the one," or like you win it in practice and you kind of know who the one is based on who's on the field. It's always, it's kind of a subjective thing, but the team knows who that is typically. So
now I'll give Ferreira a little bit of an excuse, but I will not give Christian Roldan any excuses. This is your whole freaking job, man. You're supposed to be the veteran, experienced dude, and you come in and freaking double bounce a penalty kick right into the. I mean, the keeper almost had to like reach down to save it because that's how low it was, but it was so slow and poorly placed that it was so easy to save. That I'm sorry, Christian Roldan. I do not understand. Period. Why he continues to get called up to the national team. I haven't understood it since 2019. But the man has been a part of 4 freaking Gold Cups and still has yet to put the ball in the back of the net, be it from live play, a set piece, or penalty kick. Get him out of this federation. I am tired of Christian Roldan playing for this national team. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's a valid point. Like, I mean, it's one thing if you go in there and do something, right? If you're producing and doing something, even if you're not getting, he has moments, but the moments aren't impactful. I mean, honestly, I expected him to make the kick. I mean, and especially I
expect every player to make a penalty kick.
Miazga's was surprising to me. But
Miazga's was actually pretty darn good.
It was a great kick. It was just it's a center back. I just don't expect him to bury it in the upper right corner.
I agree with that. I just like it was such a bad penalty. So bad. You didn't send. It's not like you didn't even try to send the keeper the wrong way. You just freaking roll it along the ground. So bad. We do have to point out that Matt Turner saved one. Christian Martinez, who as soon as he came up, I said, "Oh, that's the guy who's going to miss," and he did. It was a bad penalty kick that Turner read the whole time, and he got it. And at that point, we were back in it, and then unfortunately, Roldan couldn't help us.
That was a huge save, though. I thought it was done.
We needed that.
Yeah, and it's a huge thing because I mean, he saved 2 before, and look, penalty shootouts. For a keeper, it's hard. It's hard because especially at this level. So for him to have that too, it was a little bit like okay, like he's. It wasn't a fluke the first time, right? I mean, we've seen him save plenty of penalty kicks.
Well, and I keep going back to the fact that Panama, all their kickers took run-ups intentionally to try to fake which side they were going to, right? They all took kind of a stutter step, or they all took like a delayed approach because they knew if they gave anything away, and let him get his timing down, he was probably going to save it. And they did a very good job of throwing him off rhythm.
Absolutely. I mean, they did that very well, and I think that, I mean, they definitely had the advantage of going into that, I thought anyway.
But we lost. And credit to Panama, they played well the whole tournament. Honestly, they even gave Mexico a run for their money in the final. They were, I think, the overall better team that night. And sometimes that happens. Again, credit to Panama. They've been building something for a while. This coach has been in place for a while. They have some players playing incredibly well right now. A couple who, in my opinion, probably need to get a move to Europe. I think they're good enough to kind of make that jump now. And, we just didn't have different makers on the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's it. We crashed out on the penalty kicks. There's no third place match. For some reason, CONCACAF didn't want a third place match this time around. I often think they're a waste of time, but CONCACAF likes money. So that was kind of my surprise there. Let's talk about the players as a whole, though, because this is, again, the whole thing before this was that we were trying to, in theory, look at who can help elevate the player pool, who can make the A team better. Overall, who do you think helped themselves? We're talking about like that 30 to 40 man consideration group.
Well, I'm going to throw a term that I wrote an article on, and I'll continue using because I like the term and I think it has an impact for a player that, maybe didn't make, the last cycle or didn't get the opportunities, but is in their, in their prime and not really been in the national team is bridge player, right? And so DeJuan Jones to me fits that, right? Like, to me, I think he raised his stock. I think he had some beautiful crosses. He had a ton of energy. He had some he had some bad plays too, but I thought he raised his stock in a position left back where the depth is really in question, right?
Yes.
Right now. And so to me, his stock, elevated, and I was elated. I mean, that, he had an assist on a goal to Vasquez, we spoke earlier, which is a beautiful ball. I thought he did himself well in this tournament. I was happy to see it. I hope he continues, to be there. But again, he's that bridge player. He's going to be on the fringe, right? He's going to be on the fringe of that, 23-man roster, depending on who's, healthy and who's not. But he's right there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the problem we have at left back is our second string left back is our starting right back. And so, to your point, like, can DeJuan just be good enough to be the legitimate backup left back? And even if it is like, okay, Serginho's still our second choice left back, or even Scally, having four fullbacks, two of whom can play on like the side they're used to playing on, is still, I think, valid. Like, that's valuable. So I'm with you. And Jones, he seems solid enough defensively against teams that weren't. Like, it's hard to evaluate defenders other than if they look really bad. And I don't think he looked really bad at all during this tournament. So that's a plus. I thought James Sands, talking about a guy who, like, needing to a position where the second string six is Yunus Musa, you're starting other central midfielder. I thought Sands did himself some favors to move up in the eyes of whoever's, Greg or whoever's in part of that coaching staff, to at least be like, hey, I can be a backup six. He has a little bit of added benefit that he can play center back as well. So I thought he did himself some favors during this tournament. I don't think he was at all standout, but again, at the number 6 position, defensively, he was pretty clean. He can still learn to do better with the ball at his feet. No, that's not what I wanted to say. He needs to try to do more influential things with the ball at his feet, because he is good with the ball at his feet. He just needs to try to, like, make a good pass, a line-breaking pass a little bit more often. But I thought Sands was pretty good.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I mean, and let's not forget, Sands 23 years old, right? And he's consistent, and so
Yes.
I think in certain situations, his skill set is, something that can be utilized. He's not overly fast, so I think there's criticism there. But I think you're right. If he can get those breaking passes through, I think he's going to give himself to really an opportunity, because I really I think I mean, he recently, about a year ago, I think, came back from Europe. I mean, maybe enough, maybe he needs to look for
Not
another
Rangers, I think would be what I would say. Don't go to Rangers. Go somewhere like Belgium would be the place I would say.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Like, and I think he's 23. Like, he's still early on here, and so and in this cycle. So I mean, if he wants to push himself, and I'm sure he does, I think that's an opportunity for him because he was solid. He was definitely solid, and
Solid. And again, that's kind of what we're looking for here. Is it's hard to really stand out in a tournament like this, because if you do stand out, the you can rationalize it away by saying, well, you're playing against island nations. But if you look bad, which we'll talk about some who look bad, it really does show. Another guy I thought I think we're all not sure what to make of him, but I think we all agree that we want to keep seeing him as Cade Cowell.
Yeah, I mean, I'm critical.
We should be. We should be. There are things to criticize about Cade Cowell's game.
Right. I'm critical because he's 19, and that's not really the reason, but he's 19 and he's inconsistent, right? We start during the U20s. He had these moments where, like, holy cow, energy, creativity. And then we had the other moments where, like, what is this guy doing? Like, the touch is bad. Like, he's got to work on his touch, but he's 19. So there's a huge runway, but he's a great example of, like, a guy you want to bring into this tournament, give him the opportunity off the bench, see what he can do. A guy I want to see on that Olympic roster next summer. That's, he's got some growth, right? And so at some point he's going to need to make a move outside of MLS to kind of take his skill set to the higher level and gain that composure around the net, because he had some opportunities where I'm like, he could have had a quick shot on the wing. He could have, he had one extra two touch, on that. And so again, he scored a nice goal. He did some nice things, but he's 19. So I think you kind of have to give him a little bit of, runway to be able to, to do what he needs to do. So
he needs to, and I think he needs to move from San Jose, because San Jose is not a great club. But also I think he has kind of he's reached the limit of the type of player he can be by staying at San Jose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I be honest, I haven't seen him all that much there, but but I've heard that sort of, feedback from individuals that he's kind of hit his ceiling there, and so he needs to find that other opportunity for himself, and that's he's 19. I think he's going to have plenty of chances to do that, because I think he still is on the positive side of what we saw in this tournament.
Yeah, I think he was a net positive in terms of, like, he did things that made me go, oh, that could help. I think he needs to learn to think faster, because he does play fast. I mean, that's his game, right? He tries to attack players with pace. He needs to think a little faster, because, to your point, can you get your shot off a little quicker? Can you make your decision of shot versus cross versus pass a little quicker? And I think if he can figure that out, he'll probably be in a good spot. But yeah, I think he needs to elevate himself at the club level. And, is San Jose the place to do that? I don't know. He hasn't necessarily started a whole lot for them, or played a whole, like, it's not like he's a locked-in starter for them, I should say. So I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of him, but I want to see more. Is there another player that you particularly, you're like, yeah, I think that he helped themselves, he was a positive?
I mean, Jalen Neal obviously was, that for everyone. So, I mean, I think he made the most of his opportunities. Again, another 19-year-old.
Yep.
Great to see, exciting to see for him. So I think that's, there's a lot to take away there, but let's just not, again, just, they're 19, both of them. We were just talking about, let's not raise them too high or push them too low, right? We have to, there's still a lot more there, because we've seen a lot of potential 19-year-olds just fizzle out. So we have to just kind of, temper our expectations of them in general. But he's playing on a bad team and in general. So, and again, we didn't hear about Neal until January camp? Is that something about right? So, so yeah, I think, I think Neal did himself well, as and yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. We don't need to, like, elevate him. He's not, he is nowhere near starting for the full senior national team yet. Like, he is way down the depth chart. But I think he definitely improved in the depth chart, especially in the U20 depth chart, because if you bring him, Widener, and Che to the Olympics next summer, that's a really good center back trio. And so for Jalen Neal, as I've said a lot, he needs to establish himself as a true starter for LA, and then look at how do I get a move to Europe by the time I'm 22. And I think if he can focus on LA and the U23 team in the Olympics next summer, that will be part of that path for him. He needs to figure out, he needs to get with some people, and maybe hopefully Greg can help him with this, of establish what those milestones, those benchmarks are for him as he grows as a player, because you're right, LA's not a very good team, but if he can figure out his own game, then I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, and I love what you just said about that. It's like you get these mixed messages. Well, managers aren't, for USMNT, any international manager, it's not their job to kind of set the tone for players and their club moves and that sort of thing. But I think they have to. You're right. Because it is because there's going to be a conversation with these 19-year-olds. Say, look, you're 19, right? So what's ahead of you? Okay, well, you might get a few call-ups, to some of these matches depending on health and availability, right? So make the most of it. But what's next? Okay, we've got to, we qualified for Olympics, so you know what? That's kind of your next goal. That's what you have to be shooting for. That's what to be focused on. Like, and so to have that, which we haven't had in a very long time, was 2004, I think was the last time. 2008? No, 2008. Excuse me. 2008. So now that you have that, you set that benchmark, right? And say, hey, look, do that tournament, because in my opinion, this past U20 roster flips after Copa America, right? After the middle of the cycle. And then at that point, the opportunity's there. Most of these players are going to be in their early 20s at that point. And, hey, you could find your way onto this World Cup roster, if you're playing well, if injury or whatever it is happens to someone else. And so, and you have to set the table. Our management, our federation needs to do a better job at that and projecting that ahead of time, because you have to set that expectation, because these guys have just played in a Gold Cup, a FIFA tournament, and in their mind, they're like, oh, I'm here, so I should be called into the next camp. No, you're not called into that next camp necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen, as much as I thought he was very good, didn't necessarily do anything to earn a call-up for September and October of this year, right? But, and I think you and I don't see the camp cupcakes as bad things, but that's the type of time, the perfect time to bring in a guy like Jalen Neal, of MLS player who's under the age of 25, who can possibly help us. So if he can come in for that camp cupcake in January and continue to get some appearances, I mean, the reality is that the amount of chances for a guy like him to get playing time with the senior national team is going to be very limited before the U23 tournament at the Olympics, which apparently they're working up doing U23 camps in January, which is good. And that's fine. Like, Jalen is not there yet, but can he just continue to work hard and elevate his stock? I don't know if we talked about him fully yet. I know we mentioned him, but I thought Busio showed positively, mainly because I didn't have a lot of positive thoughts about him before this tournament.
Yeah, I'd agree. He's a little bit 50-50 for me. I think, again, he's, 21 years old? I mean,
yeah.
You know what I mean? We get caught up in this, and sometimes these players get lost a little bit, because he played a role in the 2021 Gold Cup, right? And so, and I just think he's in a tough club situation. Maybe this helps elevate him to that. He definitely had some moments that were very good in this tournament, and he showed well. And again, his legs, gave out like everyone else that played back-to-back, 120-minute matches. But he's a guy that we saw, back in 2021, that was showing. He kind of got some injury and some bad luck with club, and he kind of got lost a little bit. He got another opportunity, and I thought he showed pretty well. I hope for his sake he gets a move, so he can, be more of a regular starter, for club. He's kind of battling another American, Taylor
Yeah.
Tessman,
Yeah.
Tanner Tessman. And I think, that's kind of challenging because they kind of play the same position a little bit. So
Yeah. He needs to go to a first division. And that isn't going to be a top like 5 club, but can you go to someplace like Denmark and play in the first division there? Can you go to, Belgium? Can you go to even Sweden, Portugal? Like I know Portugal now, especially, is probably they're a really good league, but it's not going to work if you're staying at Venezia and staying in a second division club. Even if you're fighting for promotion, it's just not going to work that well. You got to find yourself in a true first division club. So he's got some work to do on that end. But I'm with you. I thought he was mostly positive this tournament. On the flip side, who hurt their stock?
I mean, we all know Zendejas, and I'm so he was, and I'm so high in him, and I don't. He did hurt his stock, and I just, I don't know. I think part of it is maybe the players are. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to make excuses for him, even though I want to make excuses for him too. Like, cause I'm excited about the player. He's a winger in a position that we don't have a great amount of depth. At that like second, third tier level. Like, I mean, I want him to push out, Jordan Morris and Paul Ariel. Like, I don't want to see those guys again, really, like in general. And so I guess that's where it's disappointing for me. He had some opportunities. I think he was more in his head. I don't know if his broken nose is any impact to his, his play or not, but, he just, you could see he was over trying too many extra touches, too many, extra, being a little bit more selfish because he wanted the shot when he probably should have passed the ball. There was just some pieces in there where you could definitely see he was forcing the situation. So unfortunately,
I
he
think
did
the
not have
problem is
German.
that he started the first 4 matches. Had he not been injured, I don't know if he would have started the semifinal or not, but he didn't. I mean, again, he didn't produce anything. He got some wow moments from dribbling. He got a couple of assists, but like it wasn't. Again, it's hard for me to give you full credit when you're getting goals or assists against Trinidad and St. Kitts. It's just like, good, you did the thing that's expected. I think the problem was that he didn't really influence or move the needle at any other time, and that's unfortunate because we were hoping that he could be the guy like in the past Areola or Morris, who could just be that guy who's like, okay, we trust that you're going to give us this level. It may only be a 7 out of 10, but we know you're going to give us a 7 out of 10 every time you hit or maybe that's generous, a 6 out of 10. But we know you're going to give us a 6 out of 10 every time you hit the field, and he didn't really show that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he, he's going to get more opportunities. I mean, I'd be shocked if he didn't. He's 25. I think he's, I think they like him. So.
Yeah. The other guy kind of that is paired with him is Alan Senora, because he was another guy who I think was projected to come into the squad and not necessarily be a starter for the A team, but be a guy who can be a part of that first team squad and give us a good floor. And I don't think he showed very well. I mean, Alan Senora was good in some moments, but in my opinion, mostly bad. I don't know. I just don't feel like he helped himself at all.
Yeah, I don't know if he was playing out of position or why. I mean, definitely had some moments, but I just wonder. I mean, he was playing? It seemed like he was playing more on the attacking side of the midfield piece of it, which I'm not sure he's even has that skill set.
Yeah.
And from a creativity perspective, right? And so it's like to me, he was almost in the wrong position a little bit. In that formation they were working with. So but that being said, I did find it odd he was on the Nation League roster though, because I don't rate him that high either to be on that 23 either. So I don't, and that could be part, of some injury pieces. But he's going to be interesting. I think he's. Again, I think we'll see him again. He has not impressed me overall at any point in his few caps with the U.S. So it'll be interesting, see where he fits in, because I'm not really sure what his best position is for the team as they play.
Well, that brings me to my next player that I'm not sure if it was up or down because he plays in a similar position as Senora. He's got more kind of looks with the U.S. national team than Senora. Georgi Mihailovic, what did you make of his overall performance in this Gold Cup? I mean, obviously he started, like I said, 5 games in a row in that midfield. I don't know if he was truly good in any of them. I thought he was okay. I don't know.
I would like to see him more on the attacking side of it. I would have liked to have seen more of the formation they used at the Nations League with him
Sure.
to see what he would, do a little more, because he's kind of more, press back a little bit, in more of a flatter midfield. So I think that was my criticism of it. I mean, he had his moments, but again, he had his moments against, lesser quality teams. So you can take that for what it is. I mean, he produced there. I think he was gassed,
Yeah.
in the last 2 games. He played a lot of minutes. I thought he had his moments, but a lot of times, and against a better competition, you kind of faded in the background. It didn't really do anything right or wrong, but I do want to see more of him. I don't know if he's better on the wing, or not. Like they have the thing, and we saw it for a little bit, but like, there's 3, in my opinion, there's 3 best attacking players were Vasquez, Ferreira, and Mihailovic, and to get those 3 on the field at the same time was a challenge because, like, where do you put them? Because because I don't know, Ferreira's great on the wing. You put Mihailovic on the wing. You put Ferreira. You
can't play them both as those 8 because they're not going to do.
Well, right. It's you have to make a true attacker, so it's got to be a second striker or attacking midfielder, and so. So I think that, some of that, but that comes with being able to play with the rosters a little bit. And so, and not that they had the opportunity to play a friendly before this, but like, that's the thing. It's the timing of the tournament was tough because I think if they didn't have Nations League, maybe you get a couple friendlies for the Gold Cup ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you get them in there. Maybe
you at least get one of those like closed door scrimmages type thing, 1 or 2 of those.
Right. And I think that's where kind of the U.S. is missing things a little bit right now. They didn't have that opportunity here, but like with the, you look at the friendlies that they're getting scheduled for other federations, they're finding that in there, right? They're making it happen.
Well, let's go to the third category of players. So we've had stock up, stock down. Who are we just absolutely selling? We don't want to see them anymore. And I'm going to start the list off with Cristian Roldan. I'm tired of seeing him play for this U.S. national team. He does not do anything good for us. He's played 4 Gold Cups and he's only got 2 assists over 4 Gold Cups. He didn't contribute anything this Gold Cup. And I know he was kind of a bench player, but I'm done with Cristian Roldan. I'm done. Is there anyone else that you're just like, please, never again?
Yeah, I'm done with DeAndre Yedlin. I mean, the guy, I posted it. He has now 81 caps, no goals for the U.S. He's ties Desmond Armstrong for the most caps without goals for the U.S. men's national team. Again, I understand he's a winger, but like you figure in all the 81 caps he played, he would have found the net at least once. Like, I mean, I don't think he goes away right now. I think he probably still fits a role, but like he doesn't offer a lot.
I don't know what role he'll like. I'll be honest. I don't know what role he fills because if you're saying he's the experienced veteran, why? We have Sergiño Dest and Joe Scally, or Reggie Cannon. I think for me, it's time to cut the older players off who don't make you overall better. I mean, he is at best 3rd at the right back depth chart, and I think Reynolds surpassed him this tournament. So that's like, why are we keeping around a guy who's the 4th best right back and still might be even 5th or 6th best when it's all said and done, when you include guys like, Reggie Cannon, Kyle Duncan, like even guys like that, Justin Shea playing at right back,
right.
like that's kind of where I'm at with him.
But he's fast though, so I mean that he's fast.
Yeah, I'm sure he knows the system.
Right, and well, Klinsmann liked him. He was fast, right? And so
he is, and that was useful when he was actually fast.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, I'm done with DeAndre Yedlin. I don't want to see anymore. I've never really liked him from the get go, right? Like he doesn't offer a lot to the national team. I don't know. I think his assist total is only 3 or 4. It's a very a small piece of it. So like,
especially for an attacking fullback, I can deal without like having goals. Like, okay, fine, but like when you've only gotten like less than a handful of assists as an attacking fullback.
Well, right, he's up the field a lot. That's the thing. He doesn't, he's just not composed. He just never figured it out, right? And he's what, 28 now.
No, he's older than that.
Is he older than that? Let me see. He is 30. Yeah, he just turned 30. So yeah, I mean,
I don't see him being a part of the 2026 squad.
No.
If which I'm banking, I would rather bank on a guy like Reynolds or someone like that coming good eventually than Brian or DeAndre Yedlin having to come back again. So.
Yeah, he's off my list. Thank you very much. We appreciate 81 caps. You're not going to get, you and Desmond can hold the record tie together, as far as I'm concerned.
The other guy, there's a lot of people on this list, by the way. Aaron Long, done. We don't need you. You don't offer anything that any other center back in this pool offers, and you're not even in the top 10 of center backs in this depth chart anymore. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe that's harsh, but he's not in the top 8.
Yeah, I think my criticism here is this: is that at some point in your career, you have to take a chance and play at a higher level. Long maybe got screwed by.
He's going to LAFC now.
Yeah, no, but he might have got screwed. Before he started getting injuries? 3 or 4 years ago? I think he had a couple opportunities rumored. Now I don't know if they're true or not, to go to Europe and play over there. Maybe he got screwed on that. And so, but that's the thing. Center backs can do that and figure it out a little bit better. And he just never got that opportunity or took that opportunity or whatever it may be. And again, he's 30 years old. I don't see any upside anymore with him. And I'm tired of it. I would have rather see John Brooks, who we haven't seen. Just give him that. If you're going to do that and bring in a person of that age, why not bring in Brooks? He's the same age. You know what I mean? He had a very good season in Germany. It's, to me, you're bringing in your favorites. You're bringing in your I don't know, your comfortable players, because to me that there's no upside. You already know what he is.
And he's just not that good. And that's just where I stand. I'm not going to go this in depth than anyone else, but to prove my point. Let me list for you 8 center backs right now that the U.S. could call up. Tell me which one of those Aaron Long is better than. Chris Richards, Tim Ream, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Miles Robinson, Austin Trusty, Mark McKenzie, Eric Palmer-Brown, Walker Zimmerman.
None of them. He doesn't.
And that's not including guys like Widener or Che or Neal, who, again, at the U20 level, it's I'd rather just call them up because I'm going to bet on them being good in the future.
Right, and that's going back to the tournament PC. We look at this. Okay, you're bringing in, 2 30-year-old center backs, right?
Yeah. We'll talk about him, but Miazga's another one where it's
right. And so you're bringing those two, look, fine, having one experience. I'm fine with Miazga being called in. He didn't have the tournament, fine. But I wanted to see him. It's been a long time. Give him a call,
Here's your shot, prove us wrong.
Right. And again, he didn't. And so, but it's okay. But pair him with, with a Neal or with, someone else, right? And be able to do that and see if it's a fit, right?
This is my thing: is why couldn't Austin Trusty have played in this tournament? You're telling me that him getting another preseason with Birmingham City or Arsenal is that important?
Yeah, I would have loved to see Trusty. I mean, mind you, he was low on my list. I got a lot of criticism for that one.
No,
but
totally.
Yeah, but he fits into that, right? He's a guy we haven't seen a lot of that could have helped him on the national team level. Why not? He's 25, 26 years old. He had a very good season, and bring him in.
Yeah,
we haven't seen enough of him.
Still owned by Arsenal, so he's probably going to get loaned out. But his preseason is going to be with Arsenal, where he's been before. So preseason for him right now is not that important. Playing meaningful competitive matches for the U.S. could have been important. I feel why not just bring him in? McKenzie, I think we understood was hurt eventually. We understood that he had some sort of a shoulder injury apparently. But again, I don't understand why Aaron Long still gets calls up. Okay, the next one that I'm just going to throw out there, and I don't mean anything. Not trying to say he's bad, but Sean Johnson. Just let's turn the page and bring in younger talent. We had Gaga here. I don't necessarily think Gaga should have played or not. I'm not here to debate that. It's just, thank you, Sean. This was your final Gold Cup. We appreciate you.
And I get the impression that's actually maybe what it was, right? I think you've got other players. I think the problem is you've got a gap between that fourth keeper, which is
It's
being
Sean. I
called
think Sean Johnson's your fourth goalkeeper,
right,
right?
right. And so then the problem is right now is you've got Stefan, who's definitely injury prone, and so that's problematic. So does Sean Johnson remain that third or fourth, or in there, or do you start looking at other keepers like Celentano or
Calendar, well, I
or
don't think he's
Calendar or
but
Cohen, who they brought in, right?
Yep.
He's 30, but he's still younger than Johnson,
Yeah.
and so because you do have a great group of 4 or 5 19 to 20-year-old keepers, but they're not really ready for the national team
Right.
to be called in a match you must win, right? So for as much as you want to see Gaga, he's still got other opportunities ahead of him, and he'll have his time, but it's not quite
again,
yet.
I look at like what the next camp is, which is 2 friendlies against, and obviously not great talents, with Uzbekistan and who's the other one? Oman. But like, does Sean Johnson doesn't need to be a part of that camp? It's going to be Turner. It's going to be either Horvath and Stefan, and then maybe Gaga comes over, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe it's just Turner, Horvath, Stefan.
Yeah, probably Gaga wouldn't. I'm guessing because I'm hearing there are having U23 camps for the rest of the international window.
Again, is even better. But I don't think Sean Johnson. We need to keep him. But thank you. I'm not even trying to say he was bad. It's just
no, he's fine. But his time's up. Like the next guy needs to come in and be able to provide that is needed. So, and maybe that's where Cohen comes in a little bit. I kind of he wasn't on the provisional roster, but he just participated in the Nations League. So,
Jordan Morris, is it time to say goodbye?
I think it is. Yep. Thank you, Jordan. 2 knee injuries and lack of speed, and you're just finish your MLS career how long you can do it. But thank you. You had some nice moments, but I think your time is beyond.
I think it's just up. Like I don't know if he didn't do anything to help us. The dude looked tired like 5 minutes into coming onto the field. So I don't know what was going on. It just, again, I'd rather younger players. I mean, Cade Cowell to me looked more impressive this tournament, and I think he and Morris are very similar. Let's just put Cowell into that spot. So yeah, and it's hard because you just pointed out his injury history. I've always been a big Jordan Morris fan, but that last ACL injury really derailed the progress he had made in his career. Let's talk about another guy that I know we both love to talk about, Jackson Ewell, who knows the system apparently, even though he, like you pointed out, he hasn't been a part of the team at that point up until like 2 years before this. So he gets called up just because we needed to call up a guy to kind of fill the hole in the roster after I forget who his injury replacement actually was.
Senor.
It was Senor, yeah. Because Morris couldn't be replaced. Ada Morris couldn't be replaced. But yeah, Jackson Ewell he's been okay for San Jose. I'm not trying to make it sound like he's a bad player, but you didn't even get in to the first choice roster for this 8th choice roster. You know what I'm saying?
Well, right. I mean, comment from U.S. Soccer. I can't believe they're giving us 60-player provisional rosters, right? So if you're ranking the players in a 60-player provisional roster, Jackson Ewell cannot be in the top 50. You know what I mean, for players. So, like to me, I mean, it was a name to throw on the list because he had been with the national team at some point, right? Like, it's crazy to me, that he gets that call into, and again, I don't know. I'll go back to Parks all day long, right? I don't
understand why Keaton Parks was a part of it.
Right.
I cannot fathom why Keaton Parks was not called up to this Gold Cup in the first place.
Right, So and this is my frustration with how U.S. Soccer operates, right? Like, so if you feel like you have either an opportunity to replace a player for injury, have your MLS players ready to go, right? It's like, look, do that. But then you bring in other players, from Europe. You could have Tanner Tessman could have been brought in,
Aaron
right?
Tessman could have brought in. I mean, I think
Right, he should have been. So if that's your mentality, well, if we have to call in an injury replacement, it's going to be from the MLS because they're already, they're accessible, right? You're not going to call in someone from
they're
Europe,
in season,
right? So that makes sense, right? But to call, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, like, to do that because he's not an attacking midfielder either. Like, he's not like, scoring goals or, dishing out assists like crazy. Like, he's just not his role. So you're replacing a player that, is projected to be more of an attacking midfielder. And that's what I'm saying. They just did not think through the roster selection well enough and possible replacements. You're going to have kind of have that in the back of your head. Like, look, this guy gets injured. Who's his replacement? Like, who can we quickly call in? Because they didn't have that option to do that because there's only 9 different players between the 2 provisional rosters, right?
Yeah.
And that was pretty small when you consider most of those players were definitely not going to be called in for the Gold Cup.
Yeah. The last player I want to mention, Matt Miazga. We talked about him before. I think the thing for me is that he specifically talked about how he felt jilted and that Greg had somehow done him wrong or that Greg was absolutely incorrect to not include him in the group for qualifying and for the 2022 World Cup. And, buddy, if you're going to even make anywhere close to that accusation or assertion, you can't be this bad in a Gold Cup.
Yeah, again, I was excited to see him. I was optimistic. I'm thinking, okay, a pairing, Miles Robinson with Matt Miazga. I like it. I think that's a solid center back pairing. With some of these younger players ahead of him, he just didn't do it. I mean, I do have to ask you though, is it Miazga or is it Long? You had to choose between the two. I mean,
I would rather Miazga.
I think he's more fit than Long. I think he's a little more agile than Long, but I think that's.
I still go back to those 8 guys I listed off earlier. Neither Miazga or Long have proven they're better than any of those guys. So
but the problem is this though, is that we see how the U.S. calls in players, right? That and so they call in certain types of players consistently.
Yeah.
And so it's I kind of tongue in cheek said there's a bias there, but there is a little bit of a bias there because to me, you're right. You have all those players. They're not all A or even B squad players. That's the thing. And so when you look at an Eric Palmer Brown or an Austin Trusty, like if they're healthy, those guys should be the ones getting the minutes because they're younger.
Yeah. I also understand why the U.S. Soccer wants to have a roster, go with me on this, of MLS ready players in MLS to call up, right? We talked about Jackson Ewell. So Long has filled that role. I mean, we joke that Long, he just seems to always be there. It's like he's ready. So I get that that's kind of their goal, but like there are other center backs in MLS that I'd at least like to try out. I mean, Jalen Neal is one right now that maybe he can continue to build. Miles Robinson is still in MLS for the time being. How can you maybe try to find other young MLS center backs, that aren't Matt Miazga or Aaron Long? But I understand, to your point, like they want that type of center back, so I get it.
Well, I think what we're actually seeing now is the fact that a lot of these younger center backs are leaving USL.
Austin Trusty.
Right. I mean, you look at that. I mean, right now, here's a list of the MLS, a high level. Miles Robinson, hopefully,
he'll probably be gone.
Right. Zimmerman, I don't think he's going anywhere for MLS. Long, Kessler, Miazga, Trevor Gray, like Brandon Craig, and now you get into some younger guys like Jalen Neal. Like you're getting younger guys in there. Like there's not a huge inventory of, of these older, veteran players in there. So U.S. Soccer, I think they have to reevaluate this a little bit because you can't continue down that path any longer because you don't have the quality there. Like you could debate it for a while, but you don't have it anymore. and one is because they're leaving. They're going over to Europe,
which is not a bad problem. But again, it's just I definitely don't think Long is helping us. I would rather Miazga. I just would prefer not to have either. Let's wrap this up with one positive thing about this Gold Cup. Since we've talked, I feel like a lot of negatives. Give me a positive about this Gold Cup. It doesn't have to be U.S. men's national team specific.
Positive about the Gold Cup. I mean, I from the Confederation perspective, Jamaica's getting better, Panama's getting better, Canada's still there. I think we're making a stronger federation. I'm very interested to see what qualifying looks like, because it's essentially going to be a hex when you get down to it, because only 3 teams qualify.
Yeah.
Because you already have 3 teams that the hosts. Like that, it's going to be interesting. I don't expect to see any surprises in the groups. Honestly, I think you're going to see probably Costa Rica, Panama, teams that have been there before. But like, the quality is increasing in the Confederation. It needs to get better, but it's still within the top 10 teams. So I think that if you're looking at the larger group of it, that competition is there. Again, there's some exciting players. We didn't mention him, John Tolkien. He did get outshined by DeJuan Jones, but I think
also like a couple years older.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I expect to see a John Tolkien in the Olympics, right? And that's kind of what I'm hoping is some of these players that had this opportunity also are part of this Olympic team, and hopefully they do it right and prepare right for this, right? Like, you've got to figure it out, because a lot of clubs aren't going to do this. Right. So if it's going to be MLS, then get out on and make that statement. Look, we don't expect these players to be released for the Olympics. We've talked to the clubs, or whatever. You have to do that homework, because that's just another exposure to it. It's in Paris. It's going to be, it's in next summer, a year from now. It's exciting.
Yeah.
So I think that's exciting too, because there are that handful of handful of players we saw in this Gold Cup that I think have an opportunity to make a splash next summer.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, I thought I'm with you from a Confederation standpoint, this tournament was actually pretty exciting. You had really good crowds in most places. Specifically talking about, like, the Guatemala fans were fantastic. The U.S. had really good attendance at every match they played at. I mean, we can talk a little bit about the San Diego thing, but like, they still had a mostly full stadium for a 4:30 local kickoff. That's not bad. So I think from that standpoint, it was good. But yeah, let's put a bow on this 2023 Gold Cup. We don't need to talk about it anymore. And like I said at the beginning, let's put our sights on the Women's World Cup in 2023. Thanks everyone for listening. Thomas, thank you for joining me. Follow him on Twitter at USKeeper, and for all the stuff that he puts out is there. He's put out a lot of great content that sparks a lot of good conversations. So make sure you follow him at USKeeper on Twitter. Again, if you want to support this show, go to buymeacoffee.com/SoccerForUsPod. I will be leaving for New Zealand in, let's see, at the time of this recording, 5 days. So I will be talking to y'all from down under the next time we talk. So again, Thomas, thanks for joining me. I'm Bart. I'm out.